for you right now.
Good evening, everybody. It is 6:01. It is Tuesday, May the 10th. It is our regular May meeting for the Spencer Board of Aldermen, and I officially call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum with our full board membership here this evening. With that, we will have Mayor Pro Tem Sechrist provide our invocation tonight.
Dear Father, we come to you asking for your blessing and help as we gather together. We pray for your guidance and ask that you show us how to work with joy and enthusiasm. Help us to work together as we push towards excellence for our town and citizens as we serve our community. Amen.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. You have before you the approval of minutes for April 7th, which was our pre-agenda meeting, and then 2 sets of minutes for our April 12th meeting. Are there any comments on the meeting minutes before you? All right. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the minutes.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem. All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right. And our minutes are approved from April. All right, the next item on our agenda is adjustments to an adoption of the agenda. So with that, are there any additional items or any adjustments that need to be made to the agenda before you this evening? All right, hearing none from the board. Mr. Manager, are there any things to change on the agenda tonight?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, your agenda is before you. Is there a motion to adopt it?
I move to adopt the agenda.
All right. Motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved. All right. We have a couple of recognitions this evening. There is one recognition that we will be making for Miss Jackie Smith Watson. It's a proclamation being made to honor her and her service to our local school system. And so I will read that proclamation this evening. Whereas Jackie Smith Watson is a talented and compassionate member of the community and the owner of White Picket Fence Photography, as a devout Catholic Christian who attends Sacred Heart Church, her faith has inspired her to volunteer her talents to the community through countless hours without pay. And whereas she captures images of students, families, and community members during academic achievement ceremonies, as well as extracurricular activities and events for lifetime memories, and whereas her creativity and family-oriented passion allows for families who are not able to attend events to still enjoy the occasion through her capturing of the images, and students are able to promote themselves through her images, and whereas her photos have also been featured and used in the local newspaper and other media outlets to help cover certain events, and whereas she loves her community and takes pride in capturing the town of Spencer's special moments, and whereas her passion for photography and seeking the good of our community is better because of the time and kind acts of service she renders, and Jackie can always be counted in attendance, rain or shine, and whereas the town of Spencer is proud to honor Jackie Smith Watson and her contributions of photography in our community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Jonathan B. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Spencer, North Carolina, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all of our citizens, do hereby express our sincere appreciation and thanks to Jackie Smith Watson for her generous service, and be it further proclaimed that a copy of this proclamation be forwarded to Jackie Smith Watson with sincere best wishes for continued success and many happy years ahead. Right? So that is the proclamation before you. Is there a motion to adopt that? Well, actually, all right. Is there a second? We actually don't need a motion to approve the proclamation. So, thanks, Sam. Okay. The next recognition we have is for our town staff and public service recognition. I'll turn it over to the manager for that.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. I definitely appreciate the few minutes today to highlight our staff because there's a lot of special recognitions happening this month, and I'll just note a few of these and then offer a few comments. But we had 2 different recognitions that were week-long recognitions last week. It was at the same time Public Service Recognition Week, which is kind of broad category. It's also Municipal Clerks Week last week. And on May 4th, it's not just a day to say May the 4th be with you, but it was International Firefighters Day. And then in next week, we also turn to 2 different recognitions, National Police Week and National Public Works Week. And so these are annual recognitions that certainly touch the professional fields we have in local government. And, you know, it's a special time to offer recognition, but we certainly owe recognition to our great staff here at the town year round. I'm certainly thankful to work alongside with the team. We've had a challenging last few years. We've had transition, we've had a global pandemic, we've had a lot of challenges that we have emerged from, and I'm very thankful and proud to work with a wonderful team here at the town. We are together building a model small town community, and just thinking about all the people who are involved, I'm grateful for each and every one of you. And the wonderful thing about a group of people is that together we can achieve so much if we set our sights to a shared vision. And again, these designations I spoke of are wonderful because you know, it highlights what we have to do together to provide services to the community. So with that, again, thank you for a few minutes to share that. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Francis. I think our board will echo that appreciation for you, Mr. Franzese, and for all of our staff, because obviously we would not operate without you. So we are appreciative of the team that we have assembled here in town of Spencer. All right, are there any other recognitions at this time? Okay, hearing none, we will now move forward with public comment. And so we do have a few folks signed up for public comment. I will call you by name if you will come up, and then please state again your name and address, and then you will have 3 minutes, and there is a timer on the screen, and so hopefully that will help everyone keep track of time. All right. So I believe our first public comment that we have is from the North Rowan High School Chick-fil-A leadership team. Okay. Okay.
And then they show up.
Okay.
So
We will move forward. And so we have Miss Linda Miller signed up to speak first.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. Last month I came and spoke about the summer meal program that is going to be taking place here in Spencer this summer. Central United Methodist Church has collaborated with the Rowan Salisbury School Nutrition to provide a free lunch for any child ages 3 through 18. And the dates of operation for that program will begin on Monday, June the 6th, and will end on Friday, July the 29th. It's a Monday through Friday program. We will be serving meals or free lunch every day. The only day will be no service on July the 4th. And the church is Central United Methodist Church. It's located at 200 4th Street, Spencer. And I do have the time of the meal service. It's 11:05 a.m. And I'm going to give this to Peter and ask if the town could please put this up for display. And also, I wanted to bring to your attention that there is a volunteer meeting for the summer feed program or the summer meals program. It's next Tuesday, May the 17th, and it's at 6:30, and that will also be at Central United Methodist Church at 200 4th Street. If you would like to be a volunteer, I need for you to please bring a valid government issued ID because we do need to go through the database to make sure that everyone can participate as a volunteer. And thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. All right. The next individual that has signed up to speak tonight is Ms. Sharon Hovis. If you'll please come forward.
Sharon Hovis on Van Avenue Extension. To my past co-workers, good to be here. Finally in this place, at least they could have done is put some gold on this pole, so somebody like this, Anyways, I know I'm eating up my minutes, but real quick, all it is, I sent you guys the email on my easement. Me and Jonathan has discussed some things. I'm asking for the board to look into it as well with Jonathan and discuss the things too. I don't want the board to sit here and be eyes wide shut reference to us community members, because I was told from several that for the ones that live in Spencer, we're treated like Spectrum customers. I'm so busy trying to treat everybody on the outside and the newcomers and let them know that we're doing so well that the rest of us who are customers, we're just getting minimum service. So, and I just ask that you guys can look into this for me. The mayor went out of the way to come over there and put his engineer mind to it. And so I think some good things could come out of this, but that's what I ask. The lastly thing I want to say too is do not keep kicking the can down the road over this police chief thing. I don't know what's going on. We're outside of the November from when the chief was last here. An agency needs an agency care. That's all I can say on that, speaking from experience. But most of all, also the obvious with any other positions from finance or whatever. You guys got to get on top of this, and I mean the manager. Don't kick that can down the road any further because this is costing us. And lastly, I'll sum it up. I'm hoping we're not still paying the county, and the town is paying for two agencies to still do away with crime when we don't have that much crime here. We should not. My community dollars should not be paying the county $600 a day. But most of all, just be mindful that the rest of us are still watching and looking and see what you're gonna do.
Thank you, Ms. Hovis. All right. Did we receive any written public comment?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Very good. We will now move forward. We do have an item for our consent agenda. We do not have anything on our consent agenda tonight. We have packed our agenda full. So we will move forward. The next item is to consider receiving an update on our fiscal year 2021 audit from RH CPAs and consider once again amending the fiscal year 2021 audit contract. So that's attachment 13. And that is, I believe, separate from your agenda packet. You receive that as well. All right, so we will welcome Mr. Nick Wicker forward from RH CPAs.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the opportunity to be here. First and foremost, I'm happy to report that I expect the draft to be to John this Friday. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the issues that have led to the delay. So primarily, first and foremost, we were unable to obtain trial balance that reconciled to the prior year audited financial statements. So we spent a lot of time working on the prior year balances to get the financials rolling so that we could perform our audit. Additionally, I would say in mid-January to through the end of February, I've received a lot of additional reconciliations for account balances that have been very instrumental in us being able to complete our job. So the audit is complete. Our substantive procedures are complete. The financial statements are prepared, and we are in the final review process. and I'm happy to answer any question that any of you may have.
All right, I'll open it up to the board for questions for Mr. Wicker.
Do we have any problems about next year's audit? Or is that good?
Absolutely not. The hard work is done.
Okay.
So moving forward, I would be very disappointed to issue post October 31st. So the LGC automatically grants you an extension free of charge through the end of November, but this audit should be issued by 10/30. I don't anticipate any future delays in that regard.
So there's no delay, no final payments or anything, no delay payments or anything from the town government. Well, this will late response.
No delayed payments. I'm not.
Is
not
it
sure.
any final charges or anything like that because we're so late on this audit and everything?
There's no additional costs for the delay.
There are other questions, Ms. Slade?
Mr. Wicker, it's my understanding that you've had trouble getting the electronic documents you needed from our prior officer.
That's correct.
If we ask you to turn those over to someone else next year, would there be an issue?
Absolutely not. So it is customary for audit firms to withhold proprietary information, and a trial balance is not proprietary. So I would have no qualm.
All right, are there any other questions?
These issues are, I guess, a bit different than we were told a few months ago. And I'm not casting aspersions, I'm just saying they're different. When did these become, I guess, when did you realize that these were an issue? In January or in November or when?
I'm a little bit confused by that because the primary issue is still the same. As it took an abundant amount of time to get the FY20 audited financial statements to agree to the trial balance that was provided to us. That's been the primary issue the entire time. And during those conversations, we were provided additional reconciliations that facilitated us performing our procedure.
Okay.
So it's really the same issues. Last time we spoke, we did not have the trial balance reconciled, and now we are good to go in that regard.
Okay. What in, I think, December, January, February, March, it was all COVID that had delayed you guys. And I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just asking. I personally have not heard any of this till today. Maybe I'm.
It was definitely
you
referenced.
missed the last
Oh,
one.
okay. Did I? Okay. I was out.
Yeah,
I was sick.
that
Okay.
was-
I'm
that
sorry.
was
I was actually sick myself. So okay. Very good. Okay. Cool. Okay.
All right, are there other questions? All right, Mr. Wicker, I would just say we're looking forward, very forward, to getting that draft audit and getting that. I am getting a little tired of getting notices from the state treasurer's office asking for this.
Absolutely, I understand your position. We are just as excited about it as you are, and I appreciate each and every one of you again for having us out here tonight. I wish all of you a blessed evening and travel mercy.
Thank
you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Okay. And so with that, because of that, we once again need to amend the audit contract to provide to the state treasurer's office and the LGC to notify them that we are extending the contract once again. And so, Mr. Franzese, can you confirm we are extending that through the end of this month, correct?
That's correct.
So with that, are there any questions on the request to extend the audit contract to the end of May? Hearing none, is there a motion to extend it?
Make a motion that we extend it for the end of the.
Motion by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Morgan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right, all opposed? And that has been extended. Thank you all. The next item, we will receive a presentation on the Town of Spencer restriping proposal for US 29 or Salisbury Avenue.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, I'm excited to be here to present this to you today. As I was preparing today, I realized in a panic that as much as I like to write memos, and y'all probably have learned that by now, I had not written a memo on this issue. I had lots of PowerPoint presentations, lots of maps, but I sort of took this one over as I came in the door in January and never got around to writing anything up. So
How kind of you.
this will be covered in the PowerPoint pretty much, but this will also give you something to read through between now and the June meetings when we will bring this back to you for a public hearing and then hopefully adoption by the board. So what we are talking about today is the screen I need to look at. The Salisbury Avenue restriping project, the first phase of it from 17th Street to Long Ferry Road. The reasoning behind that is probably explained better in the memo than it will be in these slides. But I did want to walk you through a few things so that you would understand this just didn't come out of the blue. The memo actually gives you some of the history that I had to actually research some of it myself to find out when all this got started and when it got to the point where I took it over in January. But in our town in 2016, the town worked with the town of East Spencer to create a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And that plan included a year's worth of work and a lot of public hearings, a lot of surveys and input from folks. This was managed by NCDOT. In 2016, the boards adopted this plan for both towns. And in that plan, it tells you, and this is part of the executive summary that I'm showing you now, some of the reasoning behind doing bike lanes. And that's the slide that shows the 4 benefits, and each one of them has a follow-up slide. Bike lanes, sidewalks, greenways, things of that nature that are supported by that plan help connect communities, help connect amenities to each other. It obviously helps people's health. People that get out and walk, ride bikes, walk on the greenways, walk on the sidewalks are healthier. They're not just physically healthier, but mentally healthier. There are economic impacts, and I have some other slides that'll follow up on this. But these kind of amenities are proven to bring new people to your community, tourism to your community, new businesses to your community, and what I think is most important is attracting people to come and live in our community. And then finally, the obvious environmental benefits. If you're riding a bicycle or walking on a trail, you're not driving a car, and therefore you're not adding to the pollution problems that we're facing as a town and a nation. You've seen this slide before. This is the chicken or the egg slide. The top of that, if you can read it, tells you that people obviously want nice things in their towns. They want better jobs. They want places to shop. They want new restaurants. And you have to ask yourself, why can't we just have those? Let's invite them to our town. Let's give them tax incentives to come here. But retail doesn't work like that. Retail goes where there are people and money. They have to have disposable income and population density to support their businesses. Until we have that, they're not coming. Nothing we can do to get them here. To get them here, you have to attract them with amenities. And again, it's a proven fact that amenities of this type, bike lanes, sidewalks, greenways, are the kind of amenities that will attract new families to our community. So you go around in circles, the town citizens definitely want these things at the top of that slide. To get there, you have to go around the circle and add the amenities. And you may not think that our citizens really want bike lanes on Salisbury Avenue, but they certainly want those things at the top of the slide. So you have to put up with some bike lanes maybe to get what we're trying to produce for our citizens. Now, I've left out a word on this slide, just caught it last night when I presented this to the planning board. But bike lanes on Salisbury Avenue are the right kind of amenities that we can get somebody else to pay for. To do bike lanes from here to Long Ferry Road or all the way to Wilcox Bridge is what this would ultimately be, would literally cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million. NCDOT is willing to do this as a part of their repaving process. So you get one of these high-buck amenities for your town basically for free. In addition to that, as we all know, we need traffic calming in our town. You look at this slide, you'll recognize, most of you will anyway, this is Jake Alexander Boulevard. I used to have a business over on that side of town, and people drove up and down Jake Alexander Boulevard like it was a raceway, because that's exactly what it looks like. There's a drag strip. There's Jake Alexander Boulevard. Very similar. Long, flat, wide. People want to go fast. There's Salisbury Avenue. Long, flat, wide. People want to go fast. Long, flat, wide. People want to go fast. Same thing all the way from one end to the other. This is Ennis Street, West Ennis Street, coming from the square in Salisbury. Ennis Street probably has 100 times the traffic that Salisbury Avenue has. But all those blue boxes show things that are in place and act as traffic calming items. The lanes are narrower. They have dedicated turn lanes. They have parking on the street. The trees and the street lights are out at the curb level instead of pushed back into the properties. Most importantly is that planted median in the middle. That's obviously an old picture. It's still got a statue there, but it's still a planted median. Those kind of things slow traffic down. It changes what is called the implied speed limit. Speed limit there is probably 35 miles an hour. And that's about what you feel like the maximum comfortable speed is. Speed limit there is 20 miles an hour. What's the comfortable speed feel like? When you go 20 miles an hour through there, you feel like you're walking. Because you feel like you could safely go 45, 50 miles an hour. Same thing with Jake Alexander Boulevard. Here are some other traffic calming features that can be done. The top left one is the one I hate, which is traffic circles. I always get lost on them trying to figure out where to get off. If it's late at night and I'm not seeing very well, I sometimes just bump right through the middle. That's not what you're supposed to do. It's the beauty of having a Jeep. They go anywhere. The one in the middle is called bump outs. Into the traffic lane, you bump out the curb and put some planted matter in there. And we're talking about maybe having one or two of those out here as a part of our town park. And then there at the bottom right is the one we're talking about now, is bike lanes. This one's the nice straight bike lane delineated by lines and those symbols. This is Main Street, starting at 17th, going back to Salisbury after they started putting in their bike lane. And that's the exact profile that we're suggesting be installed on Salisbury Avenue. A traffic lane going each direction, a center turn lane, and a bike lane on either side. You may ask yourself where all this great ideas about traffic calming and another catchphrase is street diets, a few other things you've heard about. It all started back in, I believe it's in the memo, but 2012 or so, NCDOT adopted what they called their Complete Streets program. For decades, NCDOT just did streets and roads and highways. And they left it to everybody else to figure out where to put the other stuff. When they worked through this and adopted this policy, they were publicly recognizing that all the streets and all the roads needed to provide access to all users, including bicyclists, walkers, people walking their dogs, etc. So the Complete Streets program is what NCDOT uses to design their roads today. If they were designing a new road in town, they would include sidewalks, bike lanes, medians, bump outs, traffic calming. This is a slide from that plan, and the verbiage is not so important to me as that picture, because it shows you the various people that are using a roadway. Whereas it used to might be one of those straight roadways that I just showed you. This one is curved to slow things down a little bit. Traffic lanes are fairly narrow, slow things down a little bit. There's a center turn lane to make turn actions safe, and the bike lanes. And more importantly, there's people out there using all those features. And that will happen if you build it correctly. This is our comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan. And again, that top picture was generated on a computer, but that's North Salisbury Avenue with bike lanes and a center turn lane. That plan has a map that shows you the various, what they call biking facilities. Not sure where they came up with that word. When I hear facilities, I think of a building. When they say facilities, it's a lane. That is the bike lane, that is Salisbury Avenue from 17th Street to Long Ferry. That's in the plan, and not only is it in the plan, it is the #1 priority listed in that plan. And again, this plan was adopted in 2016 by the town of Spencer and the town of East Spencer. There's similar lists for East Spencer on what their projects are. But our #1 project for bicycles was the bike lanes that we're talking about tonight. That top category up there, actually the last one on those 5 that they listed as top priorities, are the sidewalks that go along with this. That is certainly another project that we hope will happen in the near future. Again, the verbiage in this slide is not that important, but the picture in the middle gives you a profile of what we would like to see happen from 17th Street, really all the way out to the Wilcox Bridge over some period of time. Traffic lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks, planted yards, a much more appealing and attractive resource and amenity for our town. When we look at bike lanes, most that we've ever seen are those nice straight ones on the left, but there are options. And we may want to investigate these at some point prior to the actual work going on, because they do add some variety and some visual appeal to the bike lanes and the streets. That's more or less a bump out with a bike lane going to the back of the bump out instead of to the front of it. Those kind of things could be designed into this project. I will tell you that if we get much beyond just straight lanes, we're going to end up paying for it. We'll have to find some grant money to pay for it. The NCDOT resurfacing and restriping should allow us to do the straight lanes with no cost. So we're getting towards the end of this presentation. These are the actual maps that our consultant came up with. They are broken out into sections. The drawing in the middle shows you the actual profile of the street. And if you squint real hard at those computer-generated images, you can see what the widths of those lanes are. In most cases, the bike lanes are 7.5 feet wide. The traffic lanes are 11 to 12 feet wide, and the turn lane in the middle is 12 feet or a little larger in some cases. It changes a little bit. This is starting at 17th Street and going to 11th Street. This slide picks it up at 11th Street and takes you to 4th Street. And you will notice on the right-hand profile in the middle of that slide, there's something to the left of the bike lane. What that is parking. And the initial maps we got were actually used in this presentation. They gave us 2 options. One was to put parallel parking where our diagonal parking is now in the downtown area. And the other was to go with the diagonal as we have it. Diagonal requires a little more space. We felt that it would be important to our citizens and our business people in the downtown area to maintain the diagonal parking. So we have listed that as our preferred option. The latest maps that we've gotten don't even show the parallel parking anymore. And what that does is squeezes your bike lanes a little bit in the downtown section there. Not enough that it's a problem. Most bike lanes are only 5 feet wide anyway, so 7.5 feet, 5 feet is no big deal. This picks it up at 2nd Street, takes it out to Lexington, and then from Lexington to Long Ferry Road. The generated drawing really, this is a set of drawings of just the sections, and the reason that one has a bubble around it is that's our preferred cross-section with the diagonal parking instead of using their parallel parking. They like parallel parking for some reason. They think DOT likes parallel parking. I can't parallel park, so I like diagonal parking. So diagonal is what we're shooting for. That slide just shows the people in Raleigh, when they got some bike lanes, were excited enough to make signs and go tell their legislators thank you for that. So we are at the point where the planning board saw this presentation last night. They were so excited that they went ahead and voted to recommend to you to adopt this. NCDOT has received a set of our latest drawings that Kinley Horn produced. They have responded back saying they're looking at them, looking at the details, beginning to do their process. As you understand, tonight is just a presentation to you to generate some thought. The memo hopefully will answer some of the questions you might have. But this gives you until the June 9th pre-agenda meeting to satisfy yourself that this is a good effort. We will have a public hearing at the June 9th meeting, and then June 14th meeting, we will ask you to endorse this plan. If you need to make modifications to be comfortable with it, we're ready to make those. Obviously, it's your decision to make. And then we will communicate to NCDOT that this is our preferred restriping plan for this section of the road. The second section from Long Ferry to the Wilcox Bridge is actually in the 2027 plan for NCDOT. With new dollars being generated and budgets having excesses, that could happen quicker, maybe. You can't swear to that, but you always want to be prepared with a plan for what you want. So if they actually send that one forward quicker than we anticipate, we would come back to you with another plan for that section. Normally, these kind of things would take longer than this. We're sort of under the gun because they told us they had to have an answer by midsummer. As I understand from talking to Peter early this morning, when they were first approached with the fact that the road was going to be resurfaced, it was basically, we need your answer now. And this was back in 2021. At that time, a survey was done, and that was mentioned at our last meeting. Staff created a quick survey, put it online, got 14 responses, which is not a lot of people responding. And of the 14, 9 were in favor, 5 were against. Split and no middle ground. The questions really didn't allow middle ground. It was either for or against it. That's not a big enough sample to trust that that's the opinion of the town. As I mentioned, the bike ped planning process went through extensive public input. They got a lot of, they did a survey, they did public meetings, they did public workshops. They worked for a year on that project. And they had adequate public input to create a plan. And in that plan, they picked this project as the #1 priority. In addition to that, y'all just recently gone through the Parks and Recreation master planning process. And part of that was a survey. And although they didn't ask specific questions about the restriping, they did ask questions about trails and connections within our community. And that was a high priority, hiking trails and connections, which these bike lanes will provide. So I think you've got adequate public input to satisfy anyone's concern that there might not be support for this in the public. With that, I will stop and answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blunt. Does the board have questions? Ms. Sledge?
Mr. Blunt, I did have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is called the East Spencer Bike Plan.
Mm-hmm.
How does our plan tie in, or are they working on anything in East Spencer? I thought I remembered something about Andrew Street and tying that to a trail or a path to Dan Nichols Park.
There are multiple areas of planning that were in that initial plan. That plan's a thick plan. It's got lots of, again, what they call facilities, which when I read it, I thought, do they mean bike stands or something? Are we going to build those all over town? What they mean is lanes and trails and things of that nature. I quite honestly have not studied the plan from East Spencer's perspective to see what's in their plan. Obviously, we connect with them on a bridge that starts on Salisbury Avenue. So it's certainly possible that a bike lane could turn across that bridge at some point. That's not a part of this project. This project is limited to what DOT is going to do as far as resurfacing, and that's just Salisbury Avenue from 17th Street to Long Ferry Road.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing I'll point out too for the board, if you remember, we do have a $3.5 million grant from DOT for what will eventually be a greenway bikeway connector to the river. So being able to leverage DOT funding with this project as well as then future TIP funding in 2027 or earlier, along with that grant, will go a long way being able to provide connectivity between our new Yadkin River Trailhead that we're going to get an update on tonight and Spencer downtown, as well as all the way out to Standby Parks.
Joe Morris and I had a long conversation this morning about all of the amenities that we're trying to make happen right now. And this one is basically, it's an amenity in and of itself, but it's also a connector of amenities. And once you start connecting the Standback Forest to the Transportation Museum, to what will hopefully be a river park, to the 8th Street Ballpark, to what will hopefully be a Grants Creek Greenway that the county might jump in and fund at some point. You take the sum of all those things and add them together with the connections, and you get what's called a multiplier factor. People don't just come to the Transportation Museum. They come to the Transportation Museum and maybe get on a trolley and ride out to the river park and rent a canoe and paddle for a while, and then come back and watch a baseball game that afternoon, and then do this and do that. Pretty soon that means that people won't spend the night. And then one of the mayor's dreams might be a hotel popping up somewhere. And then people, once they spend the night, you start collecting all those tourist dollars. So again, this is one part of the bigger picture that you guys understand. As leaders, you have to sell it to your community. So when people ask you questions about why are you supporting bike lanes, you can try to explain to them all the stuff that ties together and how important it is to time together. And that's sort of explained in that memo better than I'm doing tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Any other questions from the board?
I don't have any questions, but I do have some disagreements with a couple of things that Steve has said. When this survey went out, I don't know if y'all ever got a chance to read the survey. The word did not get out to a lot of people that it was available. I don't care what's said, whether it's posted on the website or not, but I have talked to a lot of people that did not know anything about it. If you read the survey, it is heavily laced with response bias. In other words, it steers you to a given response. Nowhere in this thing does it say, oh, by the way, you're going to lose two viable lanes of transportation. And my main comment is, if anyone goes and talks to anybody in Salisbury that has a business, Arturo for starters there at Coco Java, they will flat tell you that they hate the new configuration of traffic. And until I see thousands and thousands of bikers going up and down the street, I don't think there's any reason whatsoever to change a major thoroughfare to incorporate bike lanes when the roads are already wide enough to allow the 4 lanes to remain there and put bike lanes in there. I've gone out with a tape measure and measured certain sections of the road. They're much wider primarily because there used to be a trolley that ran from Salisbury to Spencer back in the day to provide transportation for the people that worked at the Transportation Museum and also for shoppers to go into Salisbury. Those 4 lanes out there it's like a huge boulevard. And I'm not opposed to biking. I have a 50-year-old Schwinn bicycle that I still ride and gone through several sets of tires. But I don't see any reason whatsoever to change a major thoroughfare just for bicycles when there aren't that many bicycle riders out there to begin with. Yeah, granted, it's a nice amenity, but still, here's my main concern. Salisbury doesn't have a major event or a major business downtown. We have the North Carolina Transportation Museum, and if we change this to a single CUNY lane going north and a single CUNY lane going south, imagine what's going to happen out here when they have Thomas the Tank or the Polar Express, or you have Winterfest here and events going on over there. This will become a gridlock, a traffic nightmare from people trying to get north and people trying to get south. It's already bad enough as it is whenever there's a major wreck out on I-85 that diverts traffic down onto the bridges and into our town. You know, both lanes are filled and they're looking for a place to get out. Again, I think this was done wrong. I think that if we have a hearing, the word needs to get out to people so they can come here and talk. But I think it would be the worst mistake that we could ever make in terms of our infrastructure to change this whole thing around just to allow 2 bike lanes. There are other ways to do it. There are other ways of putting a bike lane along with the greenway and take it completely off the roadway. I just think that this is, a disaster waiting to happen. And again, I'm not opposed to bicycles. I'm not. But there aren't enough people out there riding bicycles. Where the gas prices keep going up, there probably will be. But still, think about it. I mean, those lanes of traffic out there are plenty wide. And it wouldn't take that much to narrow in the lanes already existing, keep the 4 lanes, and put bicycle lanes in there. But every place you go that's got a bicycle lane, what they ought to change is the logo that shows a bicycle and put a pile of debris, because that's what I usually see in those bike lanes anyway, are abandoned vehicles, piles of leaves, or trash. So again, when this thing comes up, I hope that the word gets out through the town, Stacy, to let everybody come in and give their input on this thing. Because again, what is decided, probably Kelly Alexander would be pulling her hair out if we go to a single lane each way. Because again, it's going to cause such a gridlock that you people just haven't seen anything.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Any other comments from the board or questions from Mr. Blunt? Yes, Mr. Francis.
I do want to highlight one of the design aspects that this concept did show besides the bike lanes, in that we currently don't have turn lanes. If you come to an intersection, for example, if you're heading north on Salisbury Avenue and need to turn left on 5th Street, wait in the traffic lane until you're able to turn left, and vehicles that might be following behind you wanting to proceed through have to either wait or go around. This design did accommodate, of course, the 2 traffic lanes, but also the center turn lane that, as it approaches intersections, is tapered to become stacked and the turn lane at the intersection. So that feature did get incorporated into the recommendation. I did want to make sure everyone was aware of that.
And our consultants were told about the various events that we have in town, told about the level of traffic that they generate, and they felt very comfortable with the turn lanes and 2 lanes of traffic being able to accommodate those. And I tend to bow to the experts on things of that nature, and that's what you're hiring for, to give you professional advice.
I will say there is a benefit to having that turn lane that we don't currently have, and that is the fact that you have a sheltered area where people that are turning can line up, and so for the transportation museum, for instance, that those folks can pull into a continuous turn lane. They're out of the path of travel for everybody heading in the direction.
That way when
Mr. Morgan, I'm speaking. You can speak after I do. Thank you. But what they allow then is for those folks that are traveling in that direction to continue on their way. And most importantly, people that are turning, it is a much safer turning movement because they are no longer turning through 2 lanes of traffic. They are only turning through a single lane of traffic, of oncoming traffic. All right, Mr. Morgan.
Once you're traveling north, there is no turn lane. Okay, you've got traffic stacked from the transportation museum entrance back all the way down back through there. Where do they go then? They go to the back street, which is the common night.
I understand that. You are talking about only a handful of large events every year that are doing. All right. Any other comments from the board?
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
One for you, Blunt, and one I guess we'll ask them later. Is it possible before June to get some? And I'm not going to do this independently if I have to, but for our week, as a group, to get some official thought from Salisbury on how they feel about this, or I mean,
we can certainly ask.
Okay.
I'm not here to debate with any members of the board, but I know business people in Salisbury also who think this is fine. This had no impact on their businesses at all. That's anecdotal information. I know a few businesses, Alderman knows a few businesses, we're getting different stories. We can certainly contact Salisbury's planning department to see if they've gotten any official feedback on it. But I drive through Salisbury multiple times almost every day. The turn lane takes away a lot of the problems that we used to have in downtown Salisbury. Certainly from 17th Street to downtown Salisbury, it has no impact. There's not enough traffic to have impact because you've done away with 2 traffic lanes. And from a bicyclist perspective, and I am a bicyclist, even with leaves occasionally making you pull out to avoid the leaves and the sticks, it's certainly a much more comfortable ride when you've got a bike lane. So I think Salisbury's done a good thing, but yes, I will try to contact Salisbury and get some feedback.
I think it'd be helpful for us to hear from both Chamber and downtown Salisbury.
We'll reach out to anybody we can think of and see. I think, quite honestly, it's probably too soon for them to have gotten much feedback, official feedback. I'm almost certain they've not done any surveys to gather scientific information on it. So almost anything we get would be anecdotal, various people coming in to either complain or say it's the very same since sliced cheese. So I will say to Mr. Morgan's benefit that I don't like surveys, period. I'm not a big fan of even public hearings and trying to make a decision based on the information you gather from them. I have written a memo on that, but I've not sent it out because it will get me in trouble, and I don't want to get in trouble. So, but Phil, rest assured, I agree with you to a great degree that a lot of surveys result in biased results, biased answers, and we have to be very careful how we accept that information and make decisions based on it. And I'll be glad to address that at any time this board wants me to. But till then, I'll stay quiet.
And I would say it's important that we as board and the town make sure that we do get the word out about the public hearing so that we can have a good cross section from our community to get their input on this matter.
It will be on the website, and the actual plan, the PDF of this presentation will be on there.
The public hearing, has that been predetermined?
Yeah, June 6th. Is that right?
June 9th, I think it is.
June 9th. That's our pre-agenda.
I think we all want to see more amenities in Spencer, more restaurants, more shops, more businesses, more opportunities. So, I don't ride a bike. tried to learn when I was a kid, and the last thing I had was a bike stolen over out of my dad's house. I was going to try to learn again, but yeah, I think we need to be careful about determining what our needs are that will help us grow this.
Anything else?
One additional, it's more general, the public works, fire, police, et cetera. And you all want to think about this, you can wait till later or some other meeting. Would this impact you all in any way, shape? And again, you guys can think.
All right. So we will pause just a moment because I believe our North Rowan Chick-fil-A leadership team is here now this evening. And so if it is the pleasure of the board, if we could allow them to come up and speak with us. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, very good.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
I'm Amber Gilmore, intervention specialist. I'm Hannah Wilkerson, and she is our Chick-fil-A leader ambassador. And so on April 23rd, we had a Unity Day at our high school, and it was very successful. And our main purpose was to invite our community out to enjoy and fellowship with one another, but also to raise funds for Second Street Park, because you guys gave us the liberty to adopt Second Street Park. So we have a donation that we collected for any project that you guys choose for Second Street Park. Our goal is maybe this summer to get some of our students together to do a cleanup of the park. We just because of the school year has just really this kind of things have just sped up, so we just have not had a time to go out and actually go to Second Street Park and do a cleanup, but we're trying to do that maybe this summer or the beginning of the school year. So we have a small donation that can go towards any project of y'all's choosing that you feel like that could be something that could beautify Second Street Park. So Hannah who can we give our check?
Why don't we, the entire board, why don't we come up here and proceed it?
That's on.
Don't give the.
Nope.
Thank you.
This is great. So we look forward to working with you, and let us know when you do your cleanup. We'll make sure Steve and Sam are out there.
Okay.
I'll watch it.
Yes. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
All right. The next item that we have is we are going to hear again from Mr. Blunt. We're going to get a presentation on our Town of Spencer Comprehensive Plan.
Apparently, I'm the entertainment for the night. And we have our slideshow up. I will tell you, before we get started, that our actions on the ground, your actions on the ground, have been moving so quickly since we started this process that I will have to correct some of these slides as I present them to you, because things that we were suggesting should happen are already happening. And that's just in a 5-month span of time that we've been working on this. Before we do the show here, I will tell you a little background information, and I think that slide even says it, update versus redo. We started out, and when I made my first presentations to you on this issue, our plan was to do a complete redo of the plan, throw the old one away, start from scratch, do it all over again. As we got into the plan and broke it down, we found that a fair amount of the existing plan, and there's the cover of your 2008 plan, called the Land Use Plan for 2025, which is just right around the corner from a planner's perspective. So everything in that plan should have been accomplished by now, and somehow we didn't quite get there. That's the table of contents from that plan, and when we again started breaking it down to try to figure out where to start and what to attack first, we recognized that we didn't need to redo the introduction, we didn't need to talk about the process, the background research. Not much has changed for Spencer. We're still located exactly where we were in 2008. We hadn't moved the town. The river's still where the river was, the interstate's still where the interstate was. The soils are still the same kind of soils. So we didn't have to redo that section. Quite honestly, demographics are about the same. From 2008, 3,000 people roughly in the town. We haven't grown a great deal, we haven't shrunk a great deal. So most of the research side of it we didn't need to do again. The parts we did need to work on are highlighted in yellow there. The vision and land use development concepts that plan espoused, in our mind, were a little ambitious in some areas and not clear enough in others. And then the goals and implementation strategies, we actually went through and struck some items that we thought didn't belong there and added a few more that we thought should. And at the very end, we added a list of development policies, which in my opinion, as a planner, is the most important part of this plan. And it was lacking that. The reason I say that is that when you adopt a statement of consistency, you're saying that your decision is consistent with this plan. And if you don't have development policies clearly stated, you don't really know whether your decisions are consistent or not. It might look right on the map, but is it consistent with what your goals for the town are for the next 20 years? So we added 3 pages of policy. This was the original plan's set of goals, and there were 6 of them. And right now, when staff comes to you and says your decision is consistent with this plan, we try to pick one of those 6 goals and say it's sort of consistent with this, or it's sort of consistent with that. Well, I can bend the language enough to make it sound like it's consistent with that if I have to go to court and testify. So that was inadequate in our opinion, and we've worked to change that. Before we get into the goals and policies that I've just mentioned, the first part, or a major part of the original plan, was looking at a map, zoning map of this town, and determining where things needed to go. And from past experience in working on these kinds of plans, if you do that in a little more detail, what you end up finding while you're looking at things from the big picture view is you focus down on some properties. And you see that those properties are critical to the development of this town. So we identified 4 properties. At one time it was 3, and it's up to 4, that we feel are of critical importance to the town's development over the next 20 years. The top one is one you've heard about and talked about and thought about a lot for the last decade, and that's the North Carolina finishing property. There's a lot of vision for what that might be, but right now that property is zoned industrial. And if somebody came into my office tomorrow, wanted to put up a 20,000 square foot metal building to make shoes, I'd have to approve it, and you would too. You'd have no choice about it. So again, we're identifying these properties and saying these properties deserve not only some more scrutiny and some more thought about what they're zoned, but we need to do it quickly, or these properties are going to be gone and the opportunities they present will be gone. I mentioned that some of these things were identified and now they're already moving ahead. The second one is the Fisher Land property. And it's being looked at by numerous people for development right now. So before we could take a closer look at how it's laid out and zoned and accessed and everything else, it's already under potential development. There's two others there, and I won't go into any detail on those unless you have questions about them. But again, these are properties that we've identified that we feel the town should apply additional scrutiny and then take quick action if we determine some action is needed. In addition to that, we came up with a list of corridors and small areas. These corridors and areas, obviously your downtown area always deserves scrutiny. And the difference between this and the identification of properties on the previous slide is that these are areas that deserve that extra scrutiny, but maybe aren't deserving of immediate action. It's stuff we should start looking at, but we don't need to rush out the door tonight and try to make any decisions. Downtown area always deserves some scrutiny. Salisbury Avenue from 17th to Long Ferry, we're talking about bike lanes, but we also should be talking about what's going to be developed along that corridor. And although we have it zoned for a certain type of development, it deserves closer scrutiny. You see the rest of them, not go through all of them, but again, we would have to say that at this point, Rowan County started a corridor study for Long Ferry Road and invited Spencer to be a part of it. So that particular line item there is already being done. That one's in action. And then a few of those talk about Hackett Street and Longs Ferry Road, north and south. The industrial zone properties in that area need a small area plan. That is already under consideration. So before we could get it on paper and get it to you for approval, some of these things are already happening. That doesn't mean we're going to take them off this list, but we want you to know that some of these, you may wonder why we've got them up there. It's because when we started writing this, those things weren't happening. 5 months ago, these things weren't happening. I've lost control of the PowerPoint.
Or was it taken away?
Hey, I know y'all are getting bored with it. One thing the existing plan did pretty well. This is the map that came out of the plan. This was a map looking forward 20 years saying this is how we want our town to grow. And it's obviously too small a scale for y'all to pick out too much of that. But what I want you to look at is that's your current zoning map. When that map was adopted last year, that map was taken into consideration. And a lot of the things that are on that map got transferred to that map. Not saying all of them are right. The next 6 or 8 slides will tell you things that I think need to be changed, but at least they thought about it. Y'all thought about it. Your planning staff thought about it. And tried to get onto your zoning map what was in your comprehensive plan. And that's the whole goal of this whole process. So, what needs to be changed? Again, I just mentioned the North Carolina finishing site. Right now it's zoned industrial. In our opinion, that area needs at least an overlay and possibly a whole new zoning classification created for it. Some kind of mixed-use riverfront property zoning classification. Again, before we can even get this on paper, we're already talking to the owner of that property. He's excited about the town's hopes that this will become something special. He wants to work with it to make that happen. So that's a good thing. Coming down from that, the next thing down in red is the Yadkin Village, I believe it's called. It shows there in red, but it's actually white because that's not in our ETJ. Rowan County zoning applies there. There's lots of stories as to why that happened. I'm not going to go into those tonight. But we feel like that area should be under our control zoning-wise. Surprisingly, Rowan County agrees. And again, this is one of those things that before we get it finished on paper, we've come up with some negotiations with Rowan County, and we're working well together on the political side and the staff side. And in all likelihood, we will extend our ETJ into that area. Which chunk is it? It's the middle block of text. It says extend ETJ. Yeah. So Spencer Village is the property that's on this side of North Carolina finishing.
Yadkinville.
Is it Yadkin Village? Okay, excuse me, Yadkin Village. You see which one we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And then coming down further, again, your zoning map shows everything on that end of town zoned as industrial. The property along the roadway, along 29 Salisbury Avenue, is obviously at this time developed mostly commercial and some old residential. In our mind, as the riverfront property gets developed into something attractive, that will become a perfect corridor for commercial development. Right now it's zoned industrial. Can't put commercial out. It's designed zoning ordinance to have nothing but industrial. So we're suggesting again that we take a second look at that and find out if we shouldn't rezone that from commercial to that. This one is working into another area. This is west of Grant Street. The lower area in blue is the Hawkinstown Road and Hawkinstown Loop. The other area is between 7th Street and 3rd Street. Again, on the west side of Grant Street. Right now it's zoned agricultural, AG. And in our opinion, it needs to be residential. AG is a residential classification, but it's our lowest density residential classification. It requires a 2-acre lot to build a house in. As I told you in that very early slide, maybe even over on the other presentation, you need more people in this town to get those amenities that you want downtown. You're running out of places to build houses in the existing municipal limits. You've got to expand somewhere. And what you want to do is expand into some mix of higher density residential so that you not only get more people, but that they have a reason to tie into municipal water and sewer. If they tie into municipal water and sewer, the town can request them to be annexed into the town. If they don't, if they build on 2-acre lots and put in a well and a septic system, they will never be annexed in, and they will never be a part of this town, and they will never pay us any taxes. So it's important in our mind that these areas, large areas of open, undeveloped parcels of land, need to be rezoned to a higher density residential classification. In the Hawkinstown Loop and Hawkinstown Road area, you can see through that blue haze that it looks like it's already developed. It's chopped up into little parcels. And that has happened over a long period of time. There are nowhere near that many houses in that area. And a lot of those lots are interior lots that have no access to a road. To be developed, they're going to have to get access to the road. I talked to a developer this morning that wanted to buy 3 lots that look like they're on one of those roads, but it's an undeveloped road. And he wanted to know when the town was going to get out there and build a road for him. And I told him that's not how it works. He's going to have to build the road. So our suggestion there, again, this one's a little more complicated, but we need to work with the private property owners in that area to see if we can motivate them to work together amongst themselves and with the town's leadership and help to actually combine some of those properties, to come together with a group of properties that could be developed, and again, hopefully as higher density so that they will want water and sewer. And water and sewer is required for high density development. It's not required for low density. All those houses you see in that area now are on well and septic systems. There's no municipal water and sewer out there. And so that area, although it's in our ETJ, will never be annexed into this town unless we can encourage some higher density development there. It would be beneficial to us. It would be beneficial to the property owners who want to sell that property, their highest dollar. It would be beneficial to the people out there scrambling, trying to find a place to live right now. There's a definite shortage of housing. This would be a way to meet that demand. Once again, I've lost control. You don't like my presentation? Okay. Next slide is again a parcel of land, and this one I may have to scratch this whole slide. This is on Hackett as it is next to the railroad track. It's zoned SFR2, I believe, for low-density residential, and my suggestion here is that it be zoned high-density residential. After being out there for numerous other projects, I recognize that there's really some pretty nice houses along that first section of Hackett, and we shouldn't discourage that kind of nice residential development. So this slide will be modified in the recommendations that we'll give you in text. The interior portion of those large lots we would suggest being changed to a higher density residential. The frontage on Hackett Street would remain as a low density residential. So we'll modify this one a little bit before we bring it to you in June. The houses are built up on the frontage. They're not built back in the middle of that property. So I don't think it's going to hurt anybody's feelings to do. This is, again, a large group of properties that are zoned AG. They are to the north of the downtown area, next to Sour Sperry. We're not suggesting somebody come in and build an apartment complex or a bunch of townhomes. But again, we do think that it should be rezoned to a higher density residential, possibly one of the SFR 2 or 3 classifications, so that it could be divided into smaller lots and therefore be built out as a subdivision, similar to what's there now. The yellow that you see up there is SFR2, so it would be the same kind of zoning classification that it would be built next to. This is another one of the slides that things are happening faster on the ground than we can get it on paper. This is again north of Long Sperry and up into Hackett. That center block is there saying we need to study the access to those properties so that they can be built out as industrial over time. The problem is there was not a good way to access it, and we've already hopefully found a way to access it. We've been working with some property owners in the area and some developers of other properties, and we're working feverishly to make that happen so that it will not only open up a small portion of that, it would open all of that on the east side of the railroad tracks. Again, it's in the plan because this plan got started in January. The efforts to, the development pressure on Hackett started about 2 months ago. The solution to the access problem came about weeks ago, and it's still in the works. In addition to that, let me drop to the bottom first and say that what you see in red is commercial zoning. It's C85, so it locks in all those properties to commercial development. We've had numerous people contact us about some of those properties being developed industrial, and we have to say, no, you can't do that. It's not zoned correctly. What we are starting to think is that, again, the frontage lots need to be maintained as commercial, so that what you will see driving down Long Ferry Road is commercial development in those areas. But what you see in the interior parcels that will be accessed off access roads could be industrial, light industrial, distribution warehouses, things of that nature. That's the demand that we have right now. Those properties are accessible from Long Ferry Road, so they would be very popular right now for that kind of use. Same thing for those properties south of Long Ferry. The whole properties are zoned commercial, and we would probably be suggesting to you at some point to revise the zoning for the internal portion of it, not the frontage, but the internal portion. Up at the top right, you see my bubble that says possible extension of town's ETJ. And again, this is one of those things that's evolving quicker than I can get it on a piece of paper for you. We talked about the Yadkin Village coming into the town's control, and as we were talking to the county, I'll give Mayor credit for this one, we started talking about our realistic possibility of extending our municipal limits to the east side of I-85. The possibility of that happening in our lifetime is probably zero. We're not going to be reaching out that far. The county has a good zoning classification for economic development issues along the interstate, and we feel at this point that it would be logical if they're willing to give us the Yadkin Village into our ETJ, that we would give them back that sliver of red commercial that's on the east side of I-85. There are also numerous properties on the west side of our municipal limits and our ETJ. If you're familiar with the story of how ETJs came about, the legislation said that towns of our size could have a 1 mile ETJ. And every planter in the state of North Carolina grabbed a divider and spread it out to 1 mile thickness and went around and drew a line. And that's how we got that sliver on the east side of I-85. That's 1 mile from our existing municipal limits. It wasn't that there was any logic put in it. We just got all we could get. We got the 1 mile. So on the west side, that line, that 1 mile line, splits a lot of property. In our discussion with the county, we've also discussed, let's fix that. There's no reason to have parcels split. The parcels that most of the properties currently in the town's ETJ will get the whole property. Parcels that are mostly in the county's ETJ will give that to the county. Again, this is a work in progress, but I want you to understand that some of these suggestions that came about through us working to create a good comprehensive plan are already happening. And probably by the time the ink's dry on it, some of these will be finished. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I just want to keep you posted. This one, I've ruffled a few feathers with it, but as I was looking at the zoning map, I came across a handful of properties that were zoned CIV, which is civic. And when it's zoned CIV, it tells us that it's not going to be used for commercial or residential use, which is a good thing in my opinion. The big blocks up to the upper right hand are the schools. They're zoned CIV and they're going to stay schools. The big blocks to the left of that drawing are Spencer Woods. It's going to stay Spencer Woods. But there were a number of little parcels, and there may be more than what I identified in that one, that are questionable in my mind as to whether they couldn't be converted to a residential or commercial zoning classification. Now, I was told last night by a planning board member that the town garden is one of those blocks that I identified there, so we will probably erase that black line and not identify that one anymore. But you have to stop and think, even for that, is there another place that the community garden could go? Because that's a valuable piece of commercial property. It's not owned by us, owned by the church. So it would have to be the church making that decision. But when we're looking at long-range planning, a 20-year window of what things are going to happen over 20 years, would it be worth it to the church to say, let's put the community garden somewhere else? And I know your arch would have to be moved, but we
think
don't.
you're going to make some people mad.
I think I'll probably erase that black line and not have to have
that. Maybe me.
Sort of like the parallel parking versus diagonal. We know when not to fight those battles. But that's where that slide came from. The two on the left are really abutting the Spencer Woods property and are partially in a floodplain, but they face a residential road. So to me, it would make sense, if we can, to change that zoning classification, sell those lots, and get them developed. Not shown on this slide, but in a previous meeting, I told at least some of you, maybe all of you, that I had identified 8 properties in the town that the town owns through one method or another. And a lot of them I would question why we own them and why we don't sell them, because right now people are paying top dollars for residential property. So I'll make that presentation to you some other time. So when we got to the goals portion of the goals and strategy portion, which is pages 7 through 10 of the original plan, that's where we sort of started having some heartburn. We had to do what we call a reality check about which of those goals were reasonable and what were not. And I think you actually have in your package what's dated June 14th, because that's when I hope you will approve it. Starting on page 7 of that is the actual suggestions that we're making as far as taking some stuff out and adding stuff back in. And I don't think my slides, no, these slides don't show it. So you have to look at your written document to see what edits we're suggesting in those areas. The one I keep harping on that makes the point, I think, for all the other changes we're suggesting is that the original plan, one of its major goals was the town was going to fix the education problem by fixing the North Orleans schools. And I applaud you for that. I think that's a great goal to have, but you can't fix it in a land use plan. If the schools needed more space for a school, then yes, you identify space for a school in your land use plan. If they wanted to expand a school, then yes, you would think about how to rezone some area around their school. But you don't mix the two kinds of plans together. This one is not a plan to fix problems in our town. This is a plan on how to use the land in the town. How you use the land in your town certainly influences a lot of things as to quality of life and how you live in this community, but you don't fix the schools in a land use plan. So if you read down through there, that suggestion has been stricken in its entirety. I think we actually did leave one sentence of that suggestion that had to do with creating safe ways to get to schools, and that is a land use issue. Finding places where sidewalks need to be and crosswalks need to be, that can be a part of your zoning document. But you can read that at your leisure. It's pages 7 through 10 are the changes to that section of the plan. And again, you can read through those prior to next week. This side, the last 3 slides really get down to the nitty-gritty of what this plan does. And again, you need to understand that your comprehensive plan is supposed to be the foundation of every other land use plan you have. Anything in your code of ordinances, anything in your development ordinance is supposed to be built upon the vision that you explain in this document. And especially your development ordinance needs guidance on what you want that development ordinance to do. I brought to you a number of text amendments from that ordinance, things we found just in using it from day to day that needed to be changed. In this process, what you do is set up a set of policies, and there's 15 of them that we've listed. There may be more that we will add at some point in the future. But these 15 we feel will give us enough direction so that we can come to you and say, we want you to approve this rezoning. And it is consistent with the comprehensive plan in general. 2-part thing. So we say it's consistent in general with the comprehensive plan, but it is specifically consistent with policies number 6, 9, and 12, whatever it might be. That way you are actually digging into the meat of the plan and saying, we recognize that this document is telling us that's the way we should make the decision. Now, the beauty of it is you as elected officials can dig into the plan and find those policies that might support a rezoning, and you still vote it down. And the attorney will advise you on this. The court wants to know that you looked at the plan. And if you decide you don't like what it says, you as elected officials can say, we're going to turn you down. And the courts will uphold your decision as long as you looked at it, as long as you show that you looked at it. And that's what the statement of consistency is supposed to do. The consistency statement we've been using is lacking in that specific part. We've always used what the 160D tells us to write up, and that would get you into court. I'm not sure you would prevail with that consistency statement. With this policy statement, the 15 items, choosing from those as we make individual decisions, basing our recommendation on what those policies say, then I think you're in good defensible territory if you ever get challenged in one of these decisions. It also makes life easier for you. As tough decisions come up, and we haven't really had tough rezoning, I guess the conditional rezoning of the 2nd Street and Salisbury Avenue was a little tough. But really, that one might be a good example of when that came before you, you should have stopped and looked at your plan, and the first question you should have asked staff is, does our plan support what you're asking us to do? And staff should have been able to tell you, in my opinion, yes, it does, and here's the policies that I think support it, or no, I don't think your plan wanted this kind of use there, and therefore based on your comprehensive plan, you should turn this down. You will have bigger and tougher decisions to make in the coming years as all this development pressure comes to bear. But that's a good example of one that shouldn't have started with the details, shouldn't have started with conditions, should have started with a simple question of, does our comprehensive plan support it? And I sat in the room and listened to the presentation, and I don't think anybody ever asked that question. The comprehensive plan is critical to those kind of decisions. That's why we're spending this much time trying to get things right. So that's the 3 pages of policy, 15 items there. I mentioned a little bit in starting that we have come to the conclusion that there's really no need to do a complete redo at this time. An update will suffice on several fronts. Number one, it'll make you legal as far as 160D, which requires you to have a reasonably current comprehensive plan in place. This will make your plan reasonably current. It will also give you a better footing for making your decisions. It will not do away with the need to replace this plan at some point, but I think you're probably 5 years out from needing to do that once you adopt these updates. You adopt these updates tonight and we come up with something a week from now that we think needed to be added, you add it. You don't wait 5 years to do this again. You don't wait a year to do this again. Just like your development ordinance, you amend things as you need to as you recognize problems. This is a living, breathing document, and it shouldn't just be put on a shelf and forgotten about. I think with that, yes, I'm finished with that. I'll be glad to answer questions. Again, we're not asking you to approve anything tonight. We will bring this back for a public hearing on the 9th and then ask you at the meeting of the 14th to approve this, hopefully. If there are specific questions you have about any of the slides, you've got a copy of it in your package, contact me. Let me know. I have learned things every step of the way in developing this, and I'm sure you have a wealth of knowledge about some of these issues that you can share with me. What we will do, the changes that I've identified will have changed by the time we bring it back to you in June. If somebody were to call me, Sam's probably good at this, send me a text or an email saying, you idiot, you missed this. And Sam and I are good friends, so that I would accept that with the knowledge that he's probably right. I did something stupid and I need to change it. So I would come back to you at that other meeting and tell you we're suggesting that what we presented prior to this is now going to be tweaked a little bit. And then, of course, y'all get to vote on the final document to decide what you do. So I'll answer any questions you have if I can still talk.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blunt. Are there questions from the board? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to this next month.
Thanks for the hard work.
And this plan, in addition to the restriking plan, will be the full plan. That document that you see there will be available on the website. So if you've got friends and family that are curious about what we're doing, tell them to go to the website and look at it. And they can read it, and then they can call me.
Several in the
they can call
the ETJ that would do.
Let's look.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is to consider appointment of Jada Alderman to our Community Appearance Commission.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
So the Community Appearance Commission currently has 2 vacancies, and the item before you tonight is an opportunity to fill one of those vacancies. We'll still have one more we need to fill. Jada Alderman is here tonight, as well as our chair, Amy Ray, and I'll give just a very brief introductory statement. So Jada has, according to her cover letter that she provided, she described she has a passion for supporting small businesses, preserving history, and improving the environment, and she wants to contribute to the success of the town. What you'll do is consider appointing her for a 3-year term that would expire May 31st, 2025. The CAC had the opportunity to interview her last night. Great conversation, and the CAC unanimously made a recommendation for the governing board to appoint her to fill that. So what I'll do now is go ahead and invite Jada up, make a very brief statement.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How you doing?
Mayor, members of the board. I'd like to first thank you all for your time and consideration with me. I'll briefly go over my history, who I am, and why I will be a valuable asset to this commission. I was raised in a small town of Farmville, North Carolina, and lived there in that area until moving to this side of the state in 2018. I graduated in 2020 with a bachelor's in economics, and then again in 2021 with a graduate certificate in business analytics. I've always had a passion for supporting small businesses, like Kyle mentioned, along with preserving history, creating, learning, growing, and improving the environment. My husband and I purchased our first home here in Spencer about a year and a half ago. We immediately fell in love with this town and all the potential that it holds. I work as an operations manager for Rowan Rock in Concord, and we are a vertically integrated real estate development company, which focuses on acquiring dilapidated properties and rebuilding them, restoring them, and then we also are dedicated to giving small businesses, farms, and less fortunate families opportunity to thrive in these spaces. I love the work that we do at Rowan Rock and be able to see how our efforts directly improve our community. The projects that the Community Appearance Commission are working on would dovetail nicely with my experience, and I would love to be able to utilize my skills and vendor relationships to contribute to the projects in our town.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Very interesting. Well, this is our home, and we're going to be here for many years.
Well, we are glad that you have made it your home, and glad to have you. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Alderman? Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for your willingness to volunteer and step up. And it's good to know your background, because I think we have some big ambitions of supporting our local businesses as well.
Most definitely.
Very good. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
So with that, is there a motion to appoint Ms. Alderman to the Community Appearance?
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Ms. Alderman to the town's Community Appearance Committee.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, you are approved unanimously. Welcome aboard. All right, next on our agenda is to consider adopting Budget Amendment Ordinance 22-008. This is for the 8th Street Ballpark, and yet another donation to the renovation project going on at the ballpark. So, Mr. Franzese.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This was a $2,500 donation received by the town to benefit the Ethnic Friends of the Ballpark group. Budget amendment before you would appropriate that amount into the recreation maintenance budget to go towards the work of the ballpark.
All right. Are there any questions from the board regarding this $2,500? All right. And I'll just say we continue to be blessed by the folks that are stepping up within our community and beyond the limits of our community. That see the treasure that the 8th Street Ballpark is for Rowan County. So, with that, is there a motion to approve the budget ordinance?
So moved.
All right. There's a motion. I'll give it to Mr. Morgan. And is there a second? Second by Mr. Howe. All in favor? All opposed? All right. That is approved unanimously. Next on the agenda is to consider adopting Budget Amendment Ordinance 22-009, and this is for a donation for our fire department. Mr. Franzese?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was as a result of a $50,000 contribution from Rowan County to the town of Spencer, as well as the other municipalities to support our fire departments. And we certainly appreciate that, and the budget amendment before you appropriates that into the current year budget for the fire department. It's certainly timely. One of the items that it's going to do is allow us to upfit our new fire lieutenants with uniforms and some maintenance issues and some other items as well. So we certainly appreciate that.
Very good. And I'll add to that, I had a chance to talk with a few of the county commissioners about it, and the impetus for that is throughout the county for municipal fire departments that are providing mutual aid within the county to some of the volunteer fire departments, and we definitely do that here in Spencer to some of the surrounding jurisdictions. And so they felt that it was necessary that the county step up and provide some compensation to those municipalities, and we are incredibly grateful for it. I've already expressed that to both Commissioner Edds and to Commissioner Green for their willingness to step up and provide that funding. It means a lot to receive. So, are there any questions on that or any discussion?
I thought it was interesting. Having lived in the county, there's a county fire tax that you get, but municipalities don't have that. So I think this is a wonderful gift on the behalf of the county to recognize the municipalities could use some help too.
Thank you, Ms. Sledge. Anything else? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve or adopt Budget Amendment Ordinance 22-009?
I move to adopt Budget Amendment 22-009.
There's a motion by Ms. Sledge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you all. All right, the next item is also for the fire department and another budget amendment ordinance. This is for Amendment Ordinance 22-010 for accepting a grant award into the budget.
Thank you once again. And yes, so this is $10,000, a grant received from the North Carolina Office of State Fire Marshal, and it is going to be appropriated into the current year fire department budget to provide some public education materials for use in schools and the community. And certainly appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from the board? I'll just add, thank you, Chief Lanning, for pursuing these grant opportunities, and I just continue to be impressed by all of our staff that are going after these grants with diligence and the success rate at which we are winning. Mr. Miller, you were going to say something? Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to approve Budget Amendment Ordinance 22-010?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Morgan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is also approved unanimously. Thank you. The next item is yet another grant. To consider accepting the Robertson Family Foundation and the Woodson Foundation grant awards and adopting Budget Amendment Ordinance 22-011 for vintage sign restoration in Spencer.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the board. We discussed this a little bit last week at the pre-agenda, but we did have in your budget this year to have a $5,000 vintage sign restoration program. Scott Allen, our Lead North Carolina Fellow, got very excited about that and has done a wonderful job of taking the ball and running with it to include exploring some grant opportunities to expedite that. The original thought was we would chip away a little bit at a time, year by year, and this is $20,000 from two local foundations that would allow us to proceed much quicker with a vintage sign restoration program. There's several here, right here on 5th Street, that are being targeted for some of the first work. There's a few other pieces at play here. Of course, Scott is working with a mural selection committee group to talk about the process as well, but we also have an informal request for proposals out there to identify an artist to complete the restoration process as well. But so this budget amendment would allow us to proceed with that and have some beautification on several properties. The one other thing I'll mention is we have been working with property owners on the legal documentation we would need in place to be able to access and do the work on their properties in the appropriate way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Franzese. So with that, are there comments or questions from the board?
On that. Now, I may have asked this some months ago. I may have meant to. With Coca-Cola in particular, do we need to go to them for trademark licensing?
I don't know,
Okay.
but we can.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know that the Coca-Cola mural in particular is one of the initial subjects, but sounds like that's not going to be an issue. Okay.
Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to adopt budget amendment ordinance 22-011 and accept both the Robertson Family Foundation and Woodson Foundation grant? All right, there's a motion by Ms. Seacrest, second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right, all opposed? That is approved unanimous. Next on our agenda is to consider adopting revisions made to the Town of Spencer Personnel Policy, Personnel Handbook, Section Article 6, and that is the leave policy. And with that, Mr. Franzese, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you once again. And as we discussed some last week, the idea behind these amendments is to update our leave policies to account for, in particular, our new firefighters that are working 48-hour shifts and how the leave policies apply to them. And so the main goal that we'll get out of this amendment is better accommodating the different staff schedules we have. Instead of being simply written for a 40-hour week schedule, this accommodates a variety of schedules for leave accrual tables, and also addresses our holiday leave and capping that to 12 hours per workday.
So with that, are there questions from the board regarding this change to the personnel policy? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the revisions as presented? A motion by Mr. Morgan. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Muhammad. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That is approved unanimously. Thank you. And next, we'll invite Mr. Joe Morris forward for an update on the Yadkin River Trailhead.
Old Man River.
In the last couple of minutes, you have acknowledged 182, well, when we throw in the trailhead grant, it's $182,500 in grant. That's really significant. Wonderful for the town. As an update, on Thursday, I reported to the board that we had, in fact, been awarded the $100,000 grant from the Recreational Trail Program. And we had been waiting on that for quite some time, and got the word. And then the immediate question that the board asked me is, well, when are you going to get started? And so what we were able to find out, we did reach out to the administrators at the trail program, and they indicated to us that for a variety of reasons they've had some staff shortages and people on leave and that sort of thing. But their goal was to have a contract for the grant, for the $100,000 grant provided to the town this week. And so they said the Spencer project was at the top of the list because, and the gentleman's name is Scott Crocker, who is the Recreation Trails Program, because we are considered a shovel-ready project. We have the design, we have our permitting in place, there's a number of checkoffs that we have gotten from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and State Historic Preservation Office, Department of Environmental Quality, and some others like that. And so we're ready to roll. And so hopefully that grant will be delivered to us in the next few days. and they indicated that it can be signed by the town manager. It does not require any kind of formal approval by the board because you've already approved the application for the grant. And of course, once we get the bid documents together, there would be an award of a contract for the construction, and that of course would come before the board for approval. I feel like I'm leaving something out. All that I wanted to tell you, but that more or less covers it. Peter may have some other observations, but that's generally the timeline. That was my. Oh, I needed to add that we're actually we have Benish under contract, Jeff Ashball, for the design and the bidding process. So that's included in a prior agreement that we had for them not to exceed value, and any costs that are incurred can now be for the trail construction are attributed back to the date of the award, which is last week. So
I think the other element we'll need to await in order to proceed with the bid. The bidding process is to just make sure we have any terms incorporated in the bid documents that we're waiting a little feedback from the state on that. And then also after the bidding process, we would not proceed with the contract until we go through the notice to proceed process from them to us. So we would need a notice to proceed to award the contract, in other words.
and that element that Peter is describing there is the language within the contract provides the guidance to finish. They write the bid specifications up, and so it's sort of like we're ready to go, but we do need that one piece that has been promised to us. Well armed.
All right, so we'll open it up to any questions or comments from the board at this time. I will start off by just backing away from the microphone, giving Mr. Morrison not that he's keeping score, but Joe, how much have you raised so far for the Yadkin River Trailhead?
Well, it depends on how you define that, because when Ronnie shows up at a meeting with $250,000, I really can't take credit for that, but it all goes in the same bucket at the end of the day. But the thing I will note, and I know I've told you, Mayor, and I've told Peter, it's easy to get these grants when the projects are compelling and they align with what the purpose of the grant program is. And Spencer is very fortunate to have a number of things that have been identified in plans and have gone undone, are ready to be done, that we can point to and say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And it makes a terrific vision for the community. I think goes well beyond the boundaries of the team. I think people understand the county, state, and so it's a simple matter of just explaining that, and generally speaking, it's easy to see. I'm happy to be part of it. It's a lot of fun.
Joe. Joe.
Yep.
Realistically, how close are we to turning to actually, groundbreaking? Because at this time last year, we were already foaming at the mouth.
I know.
Expecting something in late winter, early spring. Now it's May.
So I'm not really good with calendars, but I feel like we're probably about 90 days behind where we really, really, really wanted to be with it. And so if things do align properly and we have the contract in place by May, or by the end of May, I would want to give Jeff until the end of June, and then we've got to go to bid. So we're looking at July and August, probably 60 days, and then so we're talking about a fall, September construction. And I was talking to Jeff about that, and he said, that will probably work out pretty well for us because in that particular situation, there is a very tightly packed road bed that we're building on top of. So hopefully we won't have a muddy season kind of scenario, and it might line up perfectly with in November and December is a great time to plant trees and that sort of thing. So, being optimistic, I'd like to think that we could be under construction 1st of September and then have a groundbreaking sometime after the
You heard that.
after the Christmas. I mean, I've moved it 2 or 3 times, so what's one more?
Joe said September.
So Joe, for Rowan Creek Week and our event on the 24th, we could also do a ribbon cutting as a part of that.
So we could at least do some kind of a groundbreaking, and then a ribbon cutting maybe.
Yeah.
So we're behind, but when somebody is willing to participate at the level of $100,000, I think we're ahead of the game.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Appreciate all the support.
Thank you.
All right, very good. We will now move forward with our departmental reports, and we'll start with our planning department report.
As usual, you have my written report in your package, and I'll certainly answer any questions you might have about that. I did want to point out a few highlights, though, just to let you know a few things of interest. I've mentioned to you before that we get requests for zoning certification letters from time to time. In this past month, I've gotten certification letters from both Innospec and PCA. Had y'all not taken the action you did to modify the industrial zoning table of uses, the Innospec one I would have had to turn down, and that would have caused them to not add equipment to their production line. Things might have come to a screeching halt. So I wanted to thank you for what you did on that one. That certainly made life easier for us. I don't like to say no to people that are going to come complain to you when I say no. The car restoration shop that I mentioned earlier is an example. The conditional zoning approval that you did. Kyle handled that initially, handed it off to me once I got up and running. There have been questions about whether he's complying with the conditions that you imposed. Some of them he is not, and quite honestly, after visiting with him twice and looking at his operation, I think it is justified to slightly modify some of those conditions. Our development ordinance allows your administrator to make minor revisions to conditions. Because you were so intimately involved in creating those, I'll probably bring back a list to you at a future meeting, just to get your blessing on the minor stuff that we want to do, not just to bring him into compliance with it, but to help him as a businessman to be able to run his business efficiently. Some of the conditions, he didn't think through them real well before he agreed to them, and fully regrets agreeing to them. And the fixes are simple, they're not going to be dramatic. I just wanted to let you know that we're working on it. One funny story, and I'll close with that, is that I got a call from a young lady whose father had passed away, and she had inherited numerous lots from Spencer that he had owned, and she was trying to sell one of them, but she couldn't find the title. I wondered if we might have a copy of the title here. I advised her to go to the Register of Deeds office and get one there. She said she'd already done that, couldn't find it. I advised her to get an attorney and do a title search. Certainly they would come up with the title. Got a call from her title search people, and she said, "Mr. Blunt, the town of Spencer owns those titles." I said, "Well, I don't think so. This man's been paying taxes on them for as far as I could go back on GIS for 12 years. But according to her, there at some point the town owned those lots, either through tax lien or something, and it never got changed. So in her opinion, we own a handful of lots out there. Her attorney and our attorney and various people are trying to find a way around all that. Certainly there is a title somewhere where it's transferred back into his name, but we can't find it. Okay. So, funny story for the day. Any questions about the report?
All right, thank you. Mr. Harris.
Probably come up with the agenda. Remember to get me. Let me just say I'm so pleased that Steve is doing all the hard work, so I can tell you about the fun stuff. So I'm just going to quickly plug our Community Appearance Commission is organizing a special fundraiser event at the community garden. We do have some literature out in the front lobby. We have several flyers for the event, as well as additional brochure publications related to the community garden project. We also now have our Spencer communitygarden@gmail.com email regularly we're checking in on. We as well have a Facebook page, and we're really trying to promote the garden and getting volunteers to participate in the project. So on June 5th, which is a Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m., we're doing our spring fundraiser. Pinocchio is providing hot dogs, chips, drinks. We're hoping for a good turnout, great fun, move forward with our project. And then if you want to grab this and distribute this or let people know of it, we're also providing people information about how to contact us, where we need help, how to make a donation, and expedition. So at some point the next time you're at Town Hall before you leave tonight, check out our info kiosk. We've got some pamphlets, propaganda, disseminate them to whoever you think. That's it. Do you have any questions for me?
I have a comment. I had a conversation with a woman who was looking to move to this area, and she had spoken with you and had nothing but high praise for you and for the town of Spencer. So, appreciate it.
Were you able to meet on the cruising schedule?
Yeah, we'll circle back on that.
All right. Thank you very much, Kyle.
All right.
Next is Mr. Osborne with our code enforcement report.
Mayor, board members, good evening. How you doing?
Good evening.
Got my monthly report. If sort of any questions for that, I'd like to get into some of the properties that I've highlighted for you this month.
All right. Any initial questions? All right. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd like to start with 405 North Salisbury and kind of recap from last month. The resident or tenant failed to show for court, so the court awarded the eviction to the homeowner. And since then, as of last Thursday, the writ of possession has been issued to that property. So that property is going to be reclaimed by the property owner and will be cleaned up. And hopefully, in 30 days. As right now, that resident or tenant is not making any moves to clean up or move. Doesn't appear to at this point. He's got much of a choice once the sheriff's deputy shows up there. So I wanted to kind of cover back on that one. Kind of give you an update on where that stands. Still kind of the eyesore right across the bridge. Second, I wanted to bring up 804 South Salisbury, just down the hill here. Back in February, we had a car that spun out of control and landed in the living room of some poor lady who was laying on the couch. During that time frame, I was called out by our chief, Fire Chief Lanning, to come out there and inspect the property and ensure that the homeowners or tenants knew that they could no longer stay there, because the primary structural beam on the corner that supports the second story was actually broken by the impact of the car. So it was an unsafe situation. I condemned the property and made sure that the property was vacated. I made the homeowner aware, since the tenants were family members, made the homeowner aware. Unfortunately, the homeowner didn't have homeowner's insurance on the property, so now they're relying on the auto insurance to cover down on the property damage. So that's the delay in repair. The fire department put a tarp up to kind of block off that area, just to kind of protect it from the weather, but it was open to anybody who wanted to loot it. I got a hold of somebody here in town I knew that was willing to close that up for the homeowner for a small fee, so he was able to seal that up and protect the homeowner's property. So as of right now, we're still waiting on insurance. I know that particular home is quite visible when you come into town, so I kind of want to highlight this for you, but that's where it stands. We're still waiting on insurance to kind of come through and provide the money to fix that home. So if anybody out there doesn't have homeowner's insurance, not going to get it. You never know when a car comes in your living room. And then finally, I wanted to bring up the finishing company. There's been a lot of talk about that, and Steve does a great job of kind of highlighting the views that he has for that property. But I want to kind of take you back a little bit on my process on this property, because it's been more than just kind of recent. So last year, when I realized that there was a trailhead going out on that property, I tried to pursue the property, and it was very difficult to find. I spoke to Chief James and a few others, understood that we couldn't seem to find and get contact information for the homeowner. Went back in the records and found that the town in the past had fined him and attempted to clean up the property. Never pursued the fines that were levied against him, so they sat there just dormant and just never went anywhere. I consulted the attorney and he said it was no longer able to go after it, and said thank you. So back in January of this year, I was actually able to find some contact information with the property owner. And so I started talking about the illegal dumping that was going on there. I don't know how often y'all go out there, but it's a prime spot for that. You know, it's unprotected, it's remote, it's short, it's close to the county line and 85, so it's really prime. And so I've contacted him, spoke to him, and negotiated with him a plan to try and protect that with maybe some physical barriers. He was unwilling to do that for our negotiations, but he did agree to put up no trespassing signs and attempt to try to deter people. We put up 50 no trespassing signs throughout the property. I expressed it needed to be throughout the property, so that way it wasn't just on the front. Anybody who come off the river would be able to see this. So he did that for us. He was able to do that. In my conversations with the police department, they asked if they had a active agent signed for the police department. So we got in contact with him, had a meeting. He actually signed an active agent to be able to arrest anybody that's on the property on site without having to request permission to press charges against them. So that was the next step. So we've taken 2 steps to help protect that property. Also, recently I've made some attempts to try and deter some folks from going back in the woods, because there are some nefarious things going on in the background and behind the woods. And so I made an attempt to let the property owner know that these things will still continue. After my email to him, he committed to try to put some fencing up. I'm not sure the extent of the fencing at this point. I haven't had a conversation with him at that length at this point. But he has come to the table at that more readily with that email. So he's more apt to want to help out. And so with Steve's showing him what the town's views are for that property, he understands the opportunity that the town has, and he has, for capitalizing on that property. So now he's more willing to come. But we're still having some illegal dumping going on that property. I continue to keep an outlook on that property to see if we can find out who that is. But I will also say that I found out the sheriff's department is also keeping an eye on that property, and unbeknownst to me. So they were baiting some of that stuff without my knowledge. Some of the illegal dumping. They are also included on that active. So either county or our police department, anybody they can. So I'm excited about the fact that he's willing to come to the table and talk about protecting the property, taking what looks like a landfill, the Yakin River trailhead, when we're going to make it all nice and pretty and look over there and say, man, I'm excited about the possibility that we're going to protect that property and maybe get it cleaned up to the point where it can be part of what overall views are and plans for that area. I want to kind of give you an overview on that one, because there's been a lot of activity on that, and still a lot of it. Any questions?
So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
You said that the police could arrest anyone who is on the property. That people walk across that bridge from the Davidson County side. Will they be actually on his property when they get?
No, that's Spencer property. We own the right of way.
The right of way
there.
there.
Right of way for the road.
So if somebody parks a car to walk across, is that still trespassing? Where does his property start and our?
The roadways are Spencer owned roadways, so technically they could park on
the road. So just once you get into the interior of his property. So as long as you're parking on the roadway on North Carolina Finishing Company Lane.
Actually, I was told that that particular road from the church back to the fence is actually his father's property. The way I
From the church.
From the church back to the fence into the property. But at Piedmont going up the hill is that's the way I understand.
And is there any identifying mail or anything like that that's being dumped? I mean, frequently people throw away trash and it has a piece of mail that has their name and address on it. Have we looked at any of the items that are being dumped?
I have not looked into that. I think maybe that the sheriff's department has done some of that stuff. I'm not aware of the extent of the investigation on trying to pursue these people. I think some of it's been difficult. I think Sergeant File can maybe elaborate a little bit more on to those types of investigations and what can be done to try and pursue more of this.
Just a thought.
Catching them. Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff like tires and furniture and stuff like
furniture, yard clippings, trimming limbs and that type of stuff. There's a couple
like
boats
a
out there.
landscaping crew.
Yeah. Gutting homes and things
The
like
other
that.
issue is vandalism.
Right.
A lot of graffiti going on as well.
And probably some drug uses out there as well. Some needles.
One additional comment. I'm not talking specifically, but on both sides of the river, there's I think a developing vagrancy issue. That so you / our folks in Rowan might want to contact the sheriff's office to try to work in tandem, because it's a problem that I'm personally aware of on both sides. So that may also.
Also, I've been told there's been people that lived in those buildings that are still standing.
Other question?
Yes, Mr. Osborne, I've got a couple of things. Have you, I know last month we implemented updates to our code to prohibit parking on unprepared surface. I notice that's going to be quite a chore. Have you talked with Peter or anyone else about how to get the word out to people that are in violation, if there's so many of them, so that we can get an idea when we can start enforcing?
I have not, but I think Steve can maybe elaborate on that.
We did have a staff meeting discussion on the enforcement policy of that. Decided to start with an educational element of it. We will have an article in the summer newsletter talking about the implementation of that process. I'm also drafting several different forms that will be, some will be intended to put on the car sort of like a ticket, but explaining why they're being ticketed. Others would be door hangers to explain to the property owner. And then on our website, we will also have an explanation of the new policy and contact information to me or Joel to come out and help people establish a new parking area if they don't have it already. So we can phase it in with an educational component for several months before we actually start doing the enforcement.
Thank you, Jimmy. And there was one other, notice you and I talked about a particular property on 100 block Salisbury Road, where the resident had several appliances outside of his house, and also in a pickup truck, where he was running extension cords to power, also pallets. I did not see that on the list, and I was wondering if that person, they're still there. I was wondering if they had been contacted, if they were in violation of code.
I have had a face-to-face conversation with John, who is the brother of the owner of that particular property. He removed the pilot. The case that you're referring to is not within the month of April, which is what I provided for you. And the case that I've just been put in the report for this month. I need to revisit him and speak to him and circle back. It has been addressed with him, and he just needs to be fine. I need to get back out there and follow it.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? I do have one. Just going to inquire, since we were talking about some of the condemned property and the one on Salisbury Avenue. What is the status of the dance company and related to their sinkhole? I know we've still got that area closed off, and it's been that way for well over a year now.
The last that I heard of that, there was a suit. Now, this was last year that I had to back off from dealing with that particular property because there was a potential suit on the town from the owner. I've not pursued anything since then. I've not been forward on that stuff.
Well, we need to have that discussion because it continues to be an eyesore. Figuring out how we address that. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Anything else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Osborne.
Thank you.
Next is our police department. Invite Detective Sergeant File forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I believe my highlight of the night will be the beginning portion here, which is our PD family grew by one. So Officer Rowdy did have her baby this past Friday, 8 pounds and 5 ounces. She is at home as of today. We're very happy to congratulate her on that. I provided my normal report. If you have any questions about that, I'll definitely try to answer those for you, and then I will kind of give a little extra information about the finishing company.
Questions from the board? I know one thing that has come up. Can you give us an update on our agreement with the Sheriff's Department and where we are in the process? So,
yes. So obviously, Officer Rowdy is out for probably the next 8 to 10 weeks of maternity leave with the new baby. Officer O'Brien has recently completed his field training, so he just began hitting the street by himself now. So our current agreement with the Sheriff's Office was set to terminate on the 7th of June. That likely will need to be extended, although it will be significantly reduced hours. So what we're trying to do right now is work a mid-shift car to catch some of our peak time to where officers at night are not totally alone for 12 hours. I think as things roll on, probably set have a couple additional applicants within the next calendar month. So our goal obviously will be to be full up as soon as we can. I know one applicant that has reached out to us, one that desires to go to BLET, so that would be a fall class, which is going to stretch that out towards the holidays time frame before he would graduate. So currently we're looking at next month's calendar will be reducing the hours of the Sheriff's Office significantly. We'll also have the ability of the SROs over the summer when they are out of school, keeping in mind that we will be running a summer school program, so we'll have to be providing coverage for the schools with those SROs for a portion of the summer. So we'll get a little bit of extra benefit having some extra cars on the road, at least during peak times over the summer.
Excuse me, sir. How many officers are we short right now?
Currently, we still have 5 openings. That includes the chief's position. We have 5 total. We have 4 people assigned to patrol as of today. Officer Odie is actually the 5th. When she comes back, she will actually begin her field training, which will take most likely around 12 weeks. So we're probably looking at an October time frame for her to actually be fully trained to go to work on on her own in a vehicle. Somewhere around the 8-week point, she will go into a shadow phase, which means she'll be working alone, but she'll have another senior officer kind of following her and assisting on calls.
Other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Let me touch on if I could just touch on the finishing company real quick, just to kind of clarify a couple of things. So the Sheriff's Office, obviously we've been working with them on the finishing company. They have a dedicated deputy that is assigned to basically solid waste issues and dumping issues. There's enough of that going on in the county that we have a dedicated deputy for that, so we work hand in hand with him. He actually ran down a few leads for us that led back to a Kannapolis address. Unfortunately, it was not the individual that had dumped the materials. I believe the individual he actually spoke to was disabled. So how those items down there and pieces of mail wound up at our finishing company, we don't know. With that being said, we have obviously some cameras that we move around, and there has been some evidence. I will tell you today, the county actually found an individual dumping tires down on the lower side of Rockwell, which is very convenient because we just had tires dumped here. So being able to tie them back to the tires with no real evidence here is probably going to be real slim, but they were caught red-handed today. So hopefully
those were the tires dumped on Rowan Avenue by the Standback Forest.
Right. Pretty good chance they may be the same people that were involved in the ones that were dumped here. So we're hopeful that working with the county on this is going to kind of alleviate our problems down there. The act as agent agreement that Osborne mentioned, very good for us. It gives us and the sheriff's office the ability to charge on site. So obviously some things may not need a criminal charge, but it gives us the ability to not have to try to find the landowner in the middle of the night if one of our guys comes across somebody on the property doing something he shouldn't at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They can take appropriate actions and go ahead and act as that individual's agent, make the charge, and then appear in court for it, which helps also keep from having to subpoena the property owner to be in court every single setting. So I believe we're going in the right direction on it. A little cooperation between the agencies, I think, is going to be a good thing, and hopefully we will have more good news about that in the coming months.
All right. Anything else from the board?
Yeah, unrelated to that. First, appreciate the update. That's great. Hard to become spot, but you heard the stuff earlier about, or maybe some of it about the potentially changing, adding bike lanes, going down to one lane each side. Does that impact you at all? How do you feel about that? Are you agnostic? I mean, I'm just curious to get your thoughts.
I mean, as far as a traffic control method, if it can slow the traffic down, which everybody knows the traffic is fast out here, anything that would help us control that traffic and slow it down would be beneficial. I can see both sides on it. You're losing a travel lane going both directions. We're gaining, I think, a turn lane, which could prove to be beneficial. But as far as the law enforcement issue, I don't think it's really going to affect us negatively. But slowing the traffic down could be a positive, I guess, a byproduct of changing the configuration. There again, I don't think as far as law enforcement standpoint, it's not really going to affect us either direction. Really.
Anything else? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Next is our fire department report, Chief Lanning.
Mayor and board, how are you this afternoon?
Good. How are you?
I'm very well. Let's see. So did coffee with the fire chief this morning. That was, I think, a success. We had department heads, staff from the museum, as well as 2 citizens. So it was better than half. I sat there before and nobody showed up. So we'll call it a win. Only other thing I want to hit on, and again, this is strictly information, is I know we had began with the spec process December for a fire truck. I just wanted to outline again, with inflation, cost everything in the world today, that has increased roughly $110,000 from what was original in January to today. And then again, just wanted to highlight the need for a station addition. I feel like I'm often up here with my hands out begging, but now that we have made that step in progression, we're full-time staff. They need adequate space for us to be able to retain those qualified applicants. They have it now, but it's not what it should be. That is all that I have. Do you have any questions for me?
So, as a matter of priorities,
it is.
Which one is the higher priority?
Me and Mayor Williams spoke this morning. The first priority was staff. Without the staff, the station and the fire truck is completely irrelevant. Again, with that is station addition, and then the fire apparatus. So they're pretty close, but if I had to pick one, it'd be our addition over.
the engines don't drive themselves.
They don't. Not at all.
Not yet. They might one of these days.
Give it time.
For $110,000 more, it ought to, right?
Yes. And the last thing I made a note of, myself and Detective File have thrown this idea around, I guess, since the beginning of the year. And I was asked to wait till they were able to hire some police officers to participate. So there is a tentative plan for September 10th, the weekend of the 11th, to have a fire versus police softball game. So still working on details. It's just a thing to get staff together.
What's the date?
September 10th. Like I said, that will be a tentative date. Ironing down details.
Winners play the board.
Absolutely. Well, we talked this morning. You know, I mean, we're gonna need umpires. We need coaches. So somebody's gonna have to do something. I mean, we may look like bad news bears out there, but it'll be fun.
That's great. What time?
Very good.
You have you said it?
Not yet.
September 10th. Though.
Yes.
That's good.
Yep.
That's great.
Any questions for me?
Yes, I see the UTV was delivered to James River John Deere, currently awaiting accessories. Will you be putting a ladder on the UTV?
The UTV is sitting in the fire department right now.
It is.
Okay.
We went and picked it up last Monday. We are still waiting for the skid. That way we'll have water and the capability to transport patients to and from. Ordered that a week and a half ago. Those people for 5 weeks before delivery. So hopefully by the end of this month that'll be put on the piece of equipment and be functional.
They hid the keys from me this morning.
I saw them driving around Saturday morning. Training, they said. But they were driving around.
They were supposed to be training on it. I wasn't there, so I can't confirm.
They were having a good time.
Any further questions?
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Chief
you.
Planning. All right. Next is our Public Works report. Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Good evening.
Just a reminder that trash the last week of the month will be 1 day late because of Memorial Day. So it will be running a little bit late. The spring mulch giveaway, big success this time. Bigger than we've had in a while. We delivered 42 loads between Friday afternoon. We tried to get as much as we could on Friday because of the rain coming Friday afternoon and Saturday, but it actually worked out really well. So we delivered 42 loads and we had quite a few people come and get it. So we still have plenty. So if anybody wants any, please let us know. We'll be happy to get it to you. We're still in the final processes. I know some flyers have been handed out for the Spencer Cares event on the 21st. I spoke to a lady actually today and referred her to Sky that she was needing help. So that's a good thing. We're getting some responses from people. I did not speak with Sky to know what our numbers are at. But if anybody wants assistance that day or wants to volunteer to help that day, contact Scott. He's our leader for getting that list together. Of course, Duke Power has finished. The lights are operational in the parking lot. Later this week, if rain doesn't hurt me on Thursday and Friday, we'll get the rest of the bollards up and the asphalt patch. I did talk to JT Russell. They're making it every day, so asphalt won't be a problem. I can just go get it. They're calling for some rain Thursday, Friday, so we'll see how it works out. It's definitely on the list to get this wrapped up to the finish.
How about the remaining concrete pedestal?
We're going to take those out. I just didn't want to open any more holes until I was ready to fill those holes. So keep everything in. We want the cones gone. I know, and the bollards and everything else up there. So as soon as we can get to it, we will. The backhoe did go down the other week. Week ago. It was down for about 4 days. They did get it fixed. The part was under warranty because that part had been replaced before. So they're having DEF issues. The CAT did come replace it. They didn't charge us for diagnostic time, but he did charge us for labor to replace it. So it is back operational, and we're still trying to catch up on some backhoe piles around town, but we're still working. we were still in the application process, but proud to announce that we have hired a candidate for our sanitation position. His name is Dakota Wilhelm. Lives here in town, actually on 3rd Street. And Stacy actually did his orientation and paperwork today. He will start with us on Monday. Next month, I'll try to get him in and introduce him to everybody. So we're moving on with that, so that's great. We've done a lot of spraying this month, trying not to do as much as we have to, but we have done a lot because of spring. It is what it is. As soon as we get caught up, we had that talk this morning. As soon as I get caught up, summer won't be near as bad. We'll be keeping up. And the just one more thing with the CCAP, the property was identified and marked. The property owners have had time to look at it. So we're now arranging a meeting with them on the follow-up. So as soon as I can get Cindy and Mr. Luke and everybody together, we'll have that meeting. We'll see how they feel about it. They've seen what the area was that's actually going to be affected on their property. That's all I have for them. Do you have any questions?
All right. One question. Can you give the board a quick update? I know there was some emails this week just about some properties where we've got a few projects where maybe we're waiting on supplies or we're waiting to spray. Can you just give a quick update on what you've done, where we are on those?
Okay. On particular properties, the property that Ms. Hovis mentioned earlier, that line that ditch line, which is tied to the previous project we just did on Kane Street. It's kind of the same watershed. That has all been sprayed and taken care of for now. The road fix on Carolina, that has been taken care of and fixed. And the ditch line along Miss Clement's house is scheduled to start next week. I did get the pipe in the box. So
you were waiting on supplies.
I was waiting on supplies before we could get started that. And we've been in contact with Miss Clement this whole time, and she's been very understanding, probably more so than I would have been with a hole beside her house. But supplies are very hard to get. But I do have it on the yard, and we're getting ready to start that next week. As soon as I get the new guy in place, and we'll have a little bit of help.
I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. No problem.
Other questions, comments from the board?
Briefly,
Well, just real quick, with this recent hire, are you fully staffed now?
To a point, I still have the labor foreman's position.
Okay.
That was still like.
Briefly, a couple of neighbors in the last couple of weeks come up and asked about Jordan Avenue. There's some pretty big potholes. Jordan Avenue.
Oh, Jordan.
Yeah. And I said I'd mention it. He said FYI.
I know. At least two of those are actually a sewer issue that I brought up to Salisbury, but I will read this. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Hearing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Joel. All right. Next is our finance report.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. You do have the finance report with you, and we remain in good shape in terms of revenues versus expenditures. Our property taxes are at 100% for the year, which is good. We're ahead of the game on sales taxes, and you had our discussion last week at the pre-agenda. We kind of talked about the overall picture in terms of our revenue projections. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions on the budget, Ms. Sledge?
I did have a couple of questions. Where do the funds for the Winter Fest show up on our financial statement? I believe we committed some money in advance for skating rink.
So yes, those do not hit the operating budget. Those are coded as, I believe, live or future future expenses or liabilities that will come into play, that the Winterfest folks, should they raise the money, will then be able to reimburse that. Then future expenses for Winterfest will be also a part of the budget recommendation. So there has been a request for support towards Winterfest in next year's budget. But in terms of the contribution that was made for the down payment for the skating rink, those do not flow through the operating budget.
And then another question that I had, we have a budget page for land management that shows nothing, no expenses, no revenue, anything on it. But there's on the budget sheet for the Yadkin River Trail, it also has land management. So why is it not showing up on that land management budget page?
Sure. Yeah. So in the current year budget, what was formerly in a separate land management budget was consolidated into the 4130 administration budget, and so everything that was previously accounted for in the land management budget unit is now again accommodated in the administration unit, which I could call part of the town hall team. And then in terms of that was the Yadkin River Trailhead you mentioned. Yes, so that's just a kind of a numbering as that project fund was set up. That's the way the expenditure coded using that expenditure budget unit, but it's separate from the general fund.
It's an actual project fund, so it's a standalone fund that can span multiple fiscal years.
And it was likely set up prior to us making the adjustment to the general fund budget units.
Are there other questions on the financial report? All right, hearing none. Thank you very much. And finally, our library report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. The library report is before you. I'd like to report that the event that occurred on last Saturday was an event, was a success. I'm sorry, it was a success. There are clippings of it on the Facebook page, and it was also publicized in the Salisbury Post. If you have any questions,
despite the rainy weather, right?
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
Any questions on the library report? All right, thank you very much. That wraps up our departmental reports, and we will now move to our town manager report.
Thank you once again, Mayor and board members. A few highlights for you, and we did hear from Joel about the Spencer Cares Community Cleanup Day on May 21st. We do encourage folks to check out our website, spencernc.gov, because we have a way where you can sign up through our website if you're in need of help on that day, or if you would like to help. And some of the things that we have in mind is to focus hopefully on some exterior improvements, whether that be trimming shrubs, if you have some items that need to be removed from a porch, or just things you're having trouble with getting to the curb. We're looking for volunteers to assist to giving a hand to your neighbors. Again, maybe light repairs. We're reaching out to also encourage organizations, civic groups, church groups. If you'd like to participate as volunteers, we certainly encourage that. I even, and I don't know if it'll work, but I passed this along to some contractors that we've used in the past that have skills in repairing things, maybe. So hopefully we can get some professionals involved in doing a little service as part of that day as well. Again, as I mentioned, you can sign up on the website whether you would like to help or you need help or both, and fill out the various forms, or you could give us a call at Town Hall, 633-2231, and connect with Sky. She can help you over the phone. But we certainly are looking forward to that event, and we heard from earlier from Joe about the trailhead, and I don't know that we've talked about it tonight. So I want to make sure we also remember, in terms of grant wise, we have this month submitted both the Park grant for the town park, which Benish did on our behalf, and then also the Rural Transformation Grant. The Cardiff grant is a $500,000 dollar for dollar match. The Rural Transformation Grant $950,000 with no match. We hope to hear by July on both of those, but those are big opportunities ahead for the town park project. And kind of related to that, we have been meeting with our neighbors here at the shopping center to talk about the overall parking lot and ways we can collaborate to try to move that project forward. Last week, Joe and I actually got to meet as well with the staff at the Transportation Museum and share the Parks and Recreation Master Plan with them and talk a little bit about the parking lot and how we want to work together going forward as well. You can see the lighting now because it's gotten dark enough outside, although from my angle I can't see the new poles. Maybe on that side of the day if you can see the new poles towards the center of the lot. But we're excited about all that. We also will be continuing, our discussions though with our neighbors on the lot, and you maybe read this in the written report. I'm not in the business of naming things. That's your job, but I would submit that it may make sense for the board and for our neighbors to think about this space not just as a shopping center. And the Park Plaza name is kind of tied to it as a retail commercial center. Maybe it's time to think about what we want this to be called to align with what we see it is more of a civic space. And so there's hopefully that will come along, as well as thinking about signage and all those sorts of things to continue the redevelopment here. At the end of April, our first ARPA report was submitted. We talked a little bit about that last week. And we appreciate working with y'all on the spending plan development, and we'll continue that through the budget process. And then the final update is for the May 17th primary election. We have worked closely with the elections volunteers to prepare for having Spencer's polling place now be here in this room versus at our old facility. There is a Historic Preservation Commission meeting scheduled for Monday evening the 16th, but we have a way to allow the setup to begin in this room during the day Monday, while still allowing the meeting to occur Monday evening, and then getting the elections group in early on Tuesday to run the event. Appreciate our staff working together, including Joel and Mike Pyle and Kyle as well, to help all the pieces for that to take place. The election staff did say, and they think there's a likelihood that it could happen if there's a need for a runoff primary that would occur July 26th. So we would also accommodate that, and then the general election, of course, is scheduled for November 8th. So we think this new space will be much better suited to the polling place. So we're excited about hosting that here, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Further questions from the board? All right, hearing none, that concludes the manager's report, and we will now move forward to requests and comments by the mayor and board members, and we will start on my right with Ms. Sledge.
Thank you, Mayor. Really just wanted to let you know that the Central Carolina Council meeting is tomorrow, and I will be attending that as a representative for the town of Spencer. And I will also be standing in for Mayor Pro Tem Seacrest at North Rowan High School for their Awards Day presentation, which is on Thursday of this week. I did attend the, I said earlier that I got my COVID booster at the Chick-fil-A day, and had an opportunity to go there, and Charlie actually got an icy and shared with me because it was hot that day afternoon. And then the library event that was held on Saturday, Charlie and I attended that, and the rain and enjoyed it, and got to show him the interior of the library with some invitation from our librarian. He hasn't learned to read yet, but we're working on that.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Sledge. Mr. Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended the Chick-fil-A Community Day event. It was very much a pleasure to see the young people and the vendors that were out there at that event. Also, seeing people getting the vaccination. The event that took place, the Fabulous 50s event, it was pretty much a hit, regardless of the downpour we had. You know, some of the young ones enjoyed themselves. They had a bounce house out there, and it pretty much turned into a wet slide after that. But however, you know, the singers, they were great. The Elvis impersonators, other singers, but also too, I just want to say thank you for the hard work and dedication of the staff, the department heads, as well as continue to be great for this time.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Mayor Pro Tem.
I wanted to also tip my hat to the staff. I think we have the best staff in the county, maybe in the state. I'm real proud of everything that you do and the way that you explain things, and so that everyone can understand, including our audience and our board members. And I also want to tip my hat to all the activities that have been going on in Spencer. There's plenty to do here, more than I've ever seen in my life, and I've lived here my whole time. I know on Saturday we had the big library event. Then last night there was a big play over at Northland High School, which was wonderful. Then today there was a senior dinner, and then community cares coming up. It seems like there's 2 or 3 things every month. I can't hardly keep up with it, and I'm loving it. So I think it's great that we live in such a energetic town that is doing so much. Getting so much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Miller.
Okay, let me just say I'm gonna kind of add on to what everybody else has said. We've had some great events lately, and I would like to thank Beverly for what she's done over there this past weekend. Also, Central United Methodist Church, which sponsored several things at that event. Today we had our senior fling, and I'd like to single out Terry and Sue Schultz and the staff over at Oakdale for doing a great job. And last thing I'd like to say,
somebody in a green shirt cooked the hamburgers and hot dogs too.
Just the hot dogs.
Just the hot dogs. Hamburgers were pretty good. The hot dogs were kind of questionable. And the last thing, Joe kind of took my thunder a little bit, but you know, in the past, Spencer has never even thought about grants and everything else. And like Joe said tonight, we approved $182,500 for the town of Spencer, and I think that's fabulous. That was good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Morgan.
To add to the events, kicking back into schedule upon approval from Kyle and the staff, we're planning a low-impact cruise-ins the 4th Friday of every month from May to October. So we won't be closing any streets. We won't have an overabundance of food trucks or anything like that. We're just extending a welcome to anyone with vehicles to come on those days and park in and around our parking lot and just join hands in fellowship and gawk at each other's vehicles. So again, that's the 4th Saturday of every month from May to October. So more on that will come later. Saturday, every 4th Saturday.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Howe.
Hey, I think you guys have all said it pretty well. Just to add one thing about the Chick-fil-A event, they had a roller thing. My kids, it's uber cool. So I was kind of surprised actually. They did pretty well. So I think moving forward, we've been talking about the ice skate. Really neat. what we do here in a few months. That and the event was fabulously good at emptying my wallet. I think my kids got something in every tent. So it was great. Yeah. So it was a great event.
They'll get better at emptying the wallet as they get older.
They excel at it already.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Howe. I'll conclude tonight with just a couple of updates. One, this week, I know Ms. Sledge mentioned the Central Iowa Regional Council meeting tomorrow. And then on Thursday, I will be participating virtually in our local transportation advisory board meeting with the city of Salisbury. And so I'll be prepared to provide everyone with an update following that. On the list of topics, they're continuing their discussions on microtransit options within Salisbury and considering a pilot program for that. And we will get an update on that and see if they've selected a potential route that pilot program could be implemented on. So I'll update everybody on that once we have that meeting Thursday. Tomorrow morning, we actually have a meeting scheduled with one of the property owners off of Long Ferry Road that we were talking about earlier today. And that just goes to further our coordination and collaboration with property owners of some of those large tracts in that area and how we gain access to those sites. And so we will be meeting with EDC, with Chairman Eds, and those property owners to talk a little bit more about potentially a way to access some of those interior sites and open up access in that area. So a lot of coordination and collaboration going on, a lot of people coming to the table to have those conversations. We've met with DOT and we've been coordinating with them, getting their input and, into that as well. So a lot of neat things happening right now on that front. The other thing I do want to throw out there to go ahead and get on your calendars is September the 24th. That's a Saturday. That week, the entire week before that is Rowan Creek Week. I believe that starts on the 17th, and it will conclude on the 24th. Spencer will be hosting the closing ceremonies or closing events on that Saturday, the 24th. Tentative plans right now include the Pedal Factory doing their bike ride like they did last year from Salisbury to the Yadkin River with a detour and a stop here at Town Hall, where we'll invite folks from the Greater Rowan County community to come in and hear about our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, tour our new facility, and then the Pedal Factory folks will continue out to the river. And we will also, we're working, hoping that we can actually host a 5K event, because from Town Hall to the old finishing company site is exactly 3.1 miles. And so hoping to potentially partner with Rowan Runners Association and host an event that we would call Race to the River. And so we will do that, and then want to work with Davidson County to potentially have some food trucks at the Yadkin River Park, as well as live music. And then Roco Adventures will be providing or supporting a sunset paddle like they did last year out at the river. The whole intent is to get folks to see the potential and the promise for the future that we have with our greenway system that will eventually connect the Yadkin River Trailhead into Spencer. And so, depending on the schedule, that was why I brought up the date, we could be also having a groundbreaking ceremony that day as part of the festivities. So mark your calendar. A lot of neat stuff that we have in the works with the Creek Week Committee on that front. All right, that's all I have. Anything else from the board? Okay. Well, with that, we do have a need this evening to go into executive session for several purposes. One for personnel, and then the other for attorney-client privilege. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Motion by Mr. Muhammad. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All opposed? All right, we stand in closed session. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Staff, again, thank you for all your hard work.